How about their investigation into the deaths of the actor Gene Hackman and his wife Betsy Arakawa? They say he died from heart disease after his wife passed away from a rare infectious illness. The world was shocked when Hollywood star Gene Hackman and his wife Betsy Arakawa were found dead in their Santa Fe home weeks after they had died. As the cops dig deeper, they find strange signs that someone knew about their deaths before anyone else. Hackman's daughter, Leslie Ann, is now the center of attention. Was she involved with something much worse than anyone thought? What was she hiding, and how far did she go to cover up the truth? The answers might shock you. The death that shocked Hollywood. Shocking death of actor Gene Hackman and his wife. They were discovered inside their home in Santa Fe on Wednesday after a neighbor called police. There was silence in the house. The door was just barely open. Mail had been left outside for weeks without being touched. Someone in the neighborhood knew something wasn't right and called the cops. Officers showed up to check on the person's well-being, expecting the normal. Inside, they found something very strange. Gene Hackman's body was found near the kitchen, slouched over in a way that didn't make sense. He didn't touch his shades as they lay next to him, like they had just fallen off his hands. Betsy Arakawa's body was found in the bathroom. There were pills all over the counter. The sink's water had dried out, leaving behind a thin film. There was no blood, no breaking in, there is no sign of a fight. 2 healthy dogs were running around the house while one was dead in its crate. There was a problem. The bodies were not brand new. Skin had grown tighter over bone. The breakdown had slowed down. It was already time to start mummifying. The police found out that Gene and Betsy had been dead for weeks. The air inside the house was old and had not been moved in a long time. Food that was long gone was sitting on the counter. It felt like time had stopped. The police had one scary question left to ask. How did 2 people, one of whom was a Hollywood star, get away with it for so long? The answer came from a strange place. Gene Hackman's pacemaker had saved the last action it made. The info was checked by investigators. That made everything different. Gene might have died on February 17th. If that's the case, the house has been quiet for at least 9 days. There were no calls for help, nothing to do, no one is coming in. Still, something didn't make sense. Why was Betsy in a different room if Gene had passed out? Why didn't she call for help if she was still alive after he died? More and more questions came up. There was a small gap in the door. Had someone been there before the cops showed up? Had someone meant for that door to be open? The lab reports showed up. There was no carbon monoxide overdose. Not an overdose, not a clear cause of death. There was no more to find out about it. Then something new was found that made the case different. Their records showed that Gene Hackman's house had been watched. Someone had been watching the house for weeks before he died. There was movement picked up by security cams. Strange things were happening on the phone records. Tracking with GPS showed some strange trends. Before the cops arrived, someone knew what had happened. It was a surprise that the digital trail went straight to that person, the daughter of Gene Hackman. The investigation changed its target. The evidence didn't back up what she said. She said she had talked to her dad a few weeks before he died. The phone records showed otherwise. There were problems with the financial activities. The investigators looked deeper. They found out something even stranger. There was more to this than just his death. It had to do with money. Documents from Gene's estate had been changed before he was found, before it was even proven that he had died. Someone tried to get his money. There was strong proof. Things were going badly with the case. Was Gene Hackman's death really an accident, or was someone planning something sinister long before he was found? The 24-hour special monitoring the timeline of death. When police looked at Gene Hackman's pacemaker data, the case took a big turn. Before going quiet, the device had recorded one last movement. It was clear from the timestamp when everything stopped, everything changed on that date. Investigators looked for signs of life after that day. They looked at his phone records. No calls, don't text, no searching the web. His money activities were stopped. No bank logins, no purchases with credit cards. It looked like he had just disappeared. Then they found something else. Security cams on a nearby property caught people moving around outside of Hackman's house. There was a shade near the door. A car was left parked in the street for hours. Inside the house, motion sensors picked up on strange behavior at odd times. The front door was never opened, though. Someone was looking, but where were they? The police looked at his home security system. The logs showed something that was not good. Before he died, the bell had been turned off and on several times. No breaking in. Do not call the emergency services. But something didn't make sense. Every day Hackman did the same thing. Every morning he took his dogs for a walk at the same time. He looked at his mail, he paid his checks. His life was very routine and easy to plan. Then, all of a sudden, nothing happened. The police dug deeper and found his last digital traces, his last writing, his last search on the web, his most recent call to someone else. Each one finished quickly. Not a warning, no farewells. Then another hint showed up. Cell tower data showed that there was a strange phone signal near Hackman's house. The number wasn't registered because it kept bouncing between towers, hiding where it really came from. The signal showed up the night before his pacemaker caught its last beat. There was someone there. Someone knew what took place. Betsy should have called for help if Hackman had been having a medical problem. There was no call, though. Why didn't she leave the house if she was still alive after he died? Why didn't she tell anyone? The police looked at her bank records. On February 16th, there was only one small trade. It was small and didn't mean much by itself, but now we see it was just a digital footprint, a sign of life before everything went dark. That day, Hackman and his wife both passed away. Who had been watching them was the real question, though. Detectives looked for someone who could get into the house, someone who wants to get something. That's when they changed their attention. The records of the spying had caused some doubt. They were now going to tell the truth. What did she hide? The daughter's involvement. It wasn't clear at first who Leslie Ann Hackman was. People had been interested in the strange timeline, the surveillance video, and the data from the pacemaker, but as the police dug deeper, they found something that changed the whole case. Police said she had last talked to her dad a few weeks before he died. She said that everything seemed fine. There were no signs of concern or strange behavior. But when police looked at call logs, they didn't find any calls, texts, or anything else. The last time she was seen or talked to by her father was a lot longer ago than she had said. The facts didn't back up what she said. Investigators looked at her bank records. They were expecting normal business deals and spending habits. They found something strange instead. She had already been talking about her dad's fortune before it was official that he had died. There had been questions with the law. There were questions about inheritance at a time when no one outside the family thought Hackman was lost. Then there were the papers that had been changed. Someone looked at papers that had to do with Hackman's assets. Some important facts had changed. The time could not be ignored by the police. The situation wasn't just strange if these changes were made before February 17. They were planned. The government began to ask the tough questions. Did she know something that other people didn't? Had she been getting ready for something to happen before it did? What she did sent up even more red flags. When the contradictions were pointed out to her, she became defensive. It became less clear what she was saying. She didn't know why there were no records of the calls she said she made. She couldn't explain the money transactions linked to her name. Then another strange fact came to light. Hackman's assets were discussed with a lawyer, which was the day his pacemaker recorded its last movement. But no one had publicly said he was dead at that point. He was gone for so long that no one knew, so why was someone moving things around on his land? The time was getting closer to her. Do you think she knew anything about his last days if she was trying to get his money? Hackman's death was no longer the only thing being looked into. It grew into something bigger. Money, fraud, deception. The proof pointed to more than just a terrible accident. Every time something new was found, the walls got closer together. The pieces were starting to fit together, and soon the police would find something that would change the whole case. A secret was about to come out, and there would be no going back once it was known. The autopsy and toxicology reports. When the autopsy reports came back, they didn't answer any questions. Instead, they made more. Gene Hackman's body didn't look like it had been hurt, not any bumps. There were no broken bones, no scars for defense. There were no signs that he had been attacked or that something violent had happened. The same thing could be said about Betsy Arakawa's body. There were no marks, signs of a fight, or anything else that led to foul play. The first idea that the person was poisoned by carbon monoxide was quickly ruled out. The air, the gas lines, and every other possible cause of a leak had all been checked by the authorities. Nothing. There were no signs that the couple had been around anything that could have killed them quietly. After putting that idea to rest, investigators had to deal with a new issue.